Welcome to another episode of the F.I.N.E podcast, where a couple of knuckle-dragging veterans unpack the world of mental health as unprofessionally and informally as possible. I am Eric Peterson.
And I'm Brad Stozic.
And today's episode is about a heavy psychedelic journey and its healing effect in the veteran community. We're going to sit down with longtime friend and former guest on the podcast, veteran Chris James, who's going to share his profound experience on a special retreat using 5-MeO DMT, Ibogaine, and temazcal. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey as we do our best to take you from being freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional to truly being fine, fighting demons with DMT.
Welcome to the I'm Fine podcast with your freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional hosts, Eric Peterson and Brad Stozic.
It's been a little while.
It has.
Because we had to take a week break and we just came back from Triple H and I'm still fucking tired from that. And all of us were there.
We were.
All of us were a part of that event. Thank you very much for being here, Chris.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks again for everything that you did for us at Triple H, man. You guys sounded amazing.
I appreciate it.
We had a great time. We had a huge turnout. It was the biggest Triple H we've ever had. We raised just over $41,000 because of an amazing community.
That's awesome.
People. And dude, I haven't had a day off since that. It's been a couple weeks, but I am still trying to shake it off and get back to it. Take some time. It's a lot of peopling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes when I do that, it completely depletes my social battery for a while. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
I don't know. It's just me. Anyway, so I don't remember how long ago it was. It's a few months ago when you called me, and I don't remember if you told me about it first over the phone or if you were talking to me about it in person, but you were talking to me about this amazing retreat that you'd found. And I'm going to let you get into everything and we're going to talk about all of it. And when you shared with me your journey and what your retreat and the different medications you used did for you, it was such an amazing story. It was really cool. Everything that you shared with me, and I appreciated it so much, man. And when you told me that you were up to coming onto the podcast again and sharing your entire experience, I was just so excited, man. I'm really excited for you to be here again and to tell me about this stuff. So thank you for thank you for telling me about it before this podcast and sharing all that with me too, man. That was really cool.
Well, you're probably never heard this before, but you're an easy person to talk to. So
thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I'm sure you have heard it, but it's something that I like to say before Ambio, and that's going to kind of make sense when people, when I say Ambio or before Mexico, it would have been something I don't think I ever would have been able to do to talk about because there was so much shame and guilt, you're your own worst critic.
Oh yeah.
We all are with everything.
For sure.
And before I went to Mexico, that shame was so much. I would never have thought that me coming out in the open and talking about it, to as many people that might listen to this. So I wanted to say thank you for, giving me this space, because it's therapeutic for me to open up and talk about. Every time I tell the story, I get to kind of relive that experience again. Those endorphins start firing in the brain, and it all feels good. And on the other side of the equation is, who knows who's hearing the story and who might, be affected or might be going through something kind of similar and want to take a step towards the fire like I did. So, yeah.
How excited are you right now, Brad?
Very.
Because you haven't heard it yet. So
No,
I get to watch.
not.
Not only do I get to enjoy it for a second time, I also get to enjoy you enjoying it for the first time.
That's pretty cool.
Let's get into it, dude. What are the sources?
Yes, the sources for today's episode are HoustonChronicle.com, ScienceDirect.com, VerywellMind.com, and CasaEarth.com.
Thank you, Bradley.
You're welcome.
I'm going to give a quick summary of 3 of the things that we're going to talk about that were a part of this retreat. Okay. And one is 5-MeO DMT, The other is Ibogaine. And the third one, I'm going to say wrong every time because it's not. It's temescal.
I think that's pretty close.
Nice. I'll go with that. Temescal. So those are the three things we're going to talk about. So first one, 5-MeO DMT. Super brief overview. It's a powerful, fast-acting psychedelic compound found naturally in certain plants and the venom of the bufo alvarius toad. Alvarius toad. Also called the Colorado River toad. That's way easier to say.
And
It can be synthesized in a lab. It is chemically related to DMT, which is NN. Dimethyltryptamine. Yeah.
That was. I'll give that an A.
they say only Marines
Reading's
can't
hard,
read,
man.
right?
Reading's hard, dude. It's hard for me
Oh,
sometimes.
this
Okay.
is-
I'm doing my best. We're
I'm
gonna
having
make it
fun
through
right
this.
now. This is good.
Another well-known psychedelic, but the experience it produces is significantly different and way more intense. So 5-MeO, that's 5-MeO DMT. Second one, Ibogaine. Ibogaine is a powerful, naturally occurring psychedelic derived from the root bark of the Iboga plant. Iboga? Native to Central Africa. And then temescal is a traditional Mesoamerican sweat lodge ceremony used for physical, mental, and spiritual cleansing. And that just sounds gangster as shit. Like, I love that, dude. It's going to a sweat lodge and just sort some shit out. So yeah, that's a brief overview of those three things. So what we'll get into first is just what your life was like before this experience. So can you go into depth a little bit about what your military experience was like?
Yeah. If we're picking up from military, I got in the Marine Corps.
Rah.
Semper Fi rad.
Let's
That's right.
go.
That's right. Things are gonna get weird now. So
That's fine. Challenge accepted.
2003, I signed up when I was a junior, the summer of my senior year. So technically going into my senior years. And I guess you could say part of it was motivated from 2001, the towers going down. That was pretty fresh. And a lot of it was I didn't have a lot of direction. So, went into the Marine Corps as an engineer. I was a welder, attached with MWSS 272, Marine Wing Support Squadron in New River. So I was on a winger base, obviously not seeing a lot of combat there. Our sister squadron was over in Iraq, Al-Assad, and we were up ready to deploy. And we had an EOD team attached with our squadron, and they didn't have a security element. So they asked for volunteers. So even though I signed up to be a welder in the Marine Corps, I got the opportunity to be a 50 cal gunner. For EOD, so security element. We were IRP, Incident Response Platoon, so we got to go over to Lejeune, do the whole Advanced Infantry Machine Gunners course. We got our asses kicked in huge by the grunts, because they're the ones that trained us. All the contact drills, contact,
buddy.
Man, it was they kicked our dicks in pretty good. So,
and I got to cook for those guys. Let's go.
Let's go. You gotta fuel them, bro.
Let's go. So we did that in Iraq. I don't know if this would be the proper space. Do you want to talk about how my trauma from the military kind of tied into, or do you want to save that for, is that a later thing?
No, talk about that.
Okay. It's funny because I think a lot of us, I don't know if it's like the Hollywood effect where we look at the movies and we look at Rambo and all these other dudes kicking ass on screen, and we go over to theater and now we're the tough guys, and we don't really show that weakness of being scared, of those little nuances that always live inside of us because they're instilled in our, the amygdala, the fear center in your brain that controls, fear and response. It's something that is always there, whether we want to show our buddies, in our gun truck or not. And for me, it's something that I didn't realize until after I'd come home, that all those times that we had left the base, because our job was to take EOD, explosive ordnance disposal. For those listening, I mean, I know what that is. I assume the majority of your audience knows.
Mm-hmm.
So we took them outside of the wire. So there was a bomb that was, somebody called in, it was within their jurisdiction. We took them out. We were their security. We were ready for whatever was thrown at us. And I do want to go ahead and say for the record that there was no combat action ribbon. I didn't have to fire my weapon once, but I'm not going to just like I'm not going to overplay it, I'm also not going to underplay it as well.
Exactly.
Because that's something that I used to do.
Right.
I'm like, well, we didn't have to shoot anybody. So there was no real danger there. But what a lot of people don't realize is a 50 cal, the Mod Deuce, doesn't have a safety on it.
Nope.
There's no safety on that machine gun. So when you pull that charging handle back and you let it rip, you have a round in the chamber and your life is in the balance. Someone else's life is in the balance. Every time we left base, this is kind of a dramatic way to say it, but this is the only way I can really like conceptualize it. After I came back from Mexico, thinking about it, I'm like, it was like a coin flip, life or death, because you're going out looking for a bomb. At that time, take away Ramadi, take away Fallujah, their number one thing was IEDs.
Oh my God.
That was, besides all the kicking in the doors and doing sweeps of the city like Ramadi and Fallujah, that was their bread and butter, were IEDs. And so we were looking for one, which was great. But on the way, all these other supposed IEDs that we did find, some that weren't anything, they were just, whatever. But you don't understand the amount of heightened stress that you're in, that fight or flight,
hypervigilance.
And I don't think that for a lot of us, and I don't want to project my own experience on anybody else, but I think it's interesting to think about, because for myself, when I'm sitting in a restaurant and I have to look to see who's coming in the door, and I have to look to see where all the exits are, and I just thought it was a protector thing. And doing all this research, like, why am I so jittery? Why do I hate being startled? I get startled like anybody else. I don't like to be startled.
Right.
But before Ambio, before Mexico, when someone would startle me, I was down at my hunting camp with a buddy of mine. I'm not going to say his name. And he scared the shit out of me. We had downed a deer. We're going in looking for the deer. And he made this noise that completely rattled me. And I just wanted to punch him in the face. But I instantly got upset. After Mexico, I still get scared, but I'm not upset anymore. And so why? And I think it's because your nervous system never came down from that part of your brain, the amygdala, that fear center in your brain. It's so constantly stimulated that when you come back from Iraq or whatever situation you were in for that long of a time, to where you're that stressed out, everything is intense for 7 months. When you leave the base, you're on point. You have to be, it's business. So when you come back, your brain, essentially, it's your new normal. And it never came down from that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was so, even though I didn't see combat in a sense that, I shot or was shot at, just the fact that, it was so real and we were so worried about, is it going to be our turn next? And there was a lot of close calls, found bombs next to our truck while we were parked on the side of the road doing a sweep of the area. Thinking about, oh my God, why didn't it blow up? How many other bombs did we miss? Was anybody else that we could have, did we miss a bomb that we could have found and saved, so there's a lot of that, survivor's guilt stuff, some of that in there, but that aspect of the Marine Corps really, I didn't realize how big or how much it affected me until, honestly, man, it was Mexico, and I was doing a bunch of research, and I'll get into it later, but my why and why I wanted to do it and what I was hoping to get out of it. Doing all that digging, I found a lot of stuff about myself that I didn't really know was a problem until I started being truthful with myself. So, and then after that, this is something that I am talking about for the first time publicly in my life. I've kept this secret from a lot. Eric knows where I'm kind of going with this. Kept this secret for a very long time, but it's again, post Mexico. It's something that I'm ashamed of anymore. It's funny what didn't come into my trip, what didn't affect me when I was down there. I still am reaping the benefits. And it'll make sense later, because this is one of my intentions when I went down there. I wanted to lose the shame, but in my psychedelic journeys that I took while I was there, I didn't have any type of visions or any type of anything. I don't think I manifested anything that was all of a sudden there. But when I came home, it's one thing I noticed. I'm like, man, I didn't even think about that at all. That didn't come into my journey. But then all of a sudden, like, I'm looking at the shame and it's completely gone. The guilt's gone. So I received a bad conduct discharge from the Marine Corps. My last 3 months in the military weren't spent, thinking about what you were going to do when you got out. There was no ceremonial goodbye, congratulations with a handshake. I spent the last 3 months of my military service in the brig. locked up, as a prisoner. You got a number instead of a name, and that type of shame was something that was hard for me, because not only that, but it stripped me because of what I did, getting the bad conduct discharge. It stripped me of any, and rightfully so. So I don't want to sound like I'm not a victim, but it stripped me of any type of benefits I would ever received, a VA benefit, a ton of stuff. And even when I met Eric, and Eric's like, man, you fought for your country, you went to Iraq, you were in for 4 years, you got a good conduct medal, all that stuff, meritoriously promoted while I was in, all those things, man, you should try to, go after that discharge upgrade. And we did, and it got turned down. And even doing that before that, I just, man, it's something that ate at me. I will get into the alcohol later, but that was one of the biggest reasons why I drank as much as I did, because I was just so ashamed. I disgraced the flag. I disgraced my brothers. I disgraced the Corps. And it's one thing that I was so ashamed over. I just felt so dirty. And a lot of the reasons what happened was shaped from my childhood. And I didn't understand that at the time. And
what do you mean when you say it was shaped from your childhood?
So what happened when I was in the Marines, I got married. A contract marriage. I'm sure you heard of that. It's where it's a legal, it's unethical.
Yeah.
But it's a legal marriage. Legally, you're getting married. It's because when you get married in the military, you get all this extra compensation. You get compensation for housing, compensation for food. You can go live out in town. So I did that just so I could go live out in town. I didn't care about, the girl, none of that stuff. And that's the wrong reason to get married. My dad, who I don't have a relationship with anymore. We can get into that a little bit later if you want to. But he's been married 11 times. Not a good human being at all. In any stretch of the imagination, cheated on his best friends, cheated on his wife with his best friend's wife, had an affair with his best friend's wife. The amount of step siblings I had in my life was like a revolving door. I mean, the guy's been married 11 times every time. And so I don't think I really had a good example of what love was like. And my mom had been married 4 different times, twice to the same man, a monster. And this guy, we lived in, it was fear and eggshells. There was no peace inside the home.
Right.
It was about learning how to survive instead of learning about how to live.
No sense of normalcy.
Not at all. Especially with him. And so I don't think that I ever really had a good impression of what love was like in marriage. And not that every kid who goes through that is completely lost, but my dad would, he would congratulate me if he found out like that he knew that I was with more than one girl on the same day. Like I was with a girl in the morning and another girl that evening. He'd be like, that's my boy. He's a real James. That's what a real man does. And, and lo and behold, it doesn't surprise me that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get married for money. Why not? Like, so I can go live out in town. I don't have to live in the barracks. No more field day inspections. They're not going to fuck with me anymore. I can go do my own thing.
I'm sure no Marine has ever done that before or since.
But
Amanda and I are the only ones still married out of like our friend group. We're the only ones.
Still have that.
There's probably a lot of people at home that are confused right now. So that's not illegal to do that. What was illegal is I got divorced. I never told the Marine Corps that I was divorced. So I could. It wasn't necessarily so I could continue getting the money, because when I got divorced was 3 weeks before we went to Iraq. So I'm not a welder anymore. I'm a machine gunner. The training package was so huge. All of our gear that we're shipping over in country, you guys remember, anytime you deploy or go anywhere, it doesn't matter. You could be doing a training evolution in the States and it's still a big thing.
Yeah.
And it was a distraction thing. I'll take care of it when I get in country. I never took care of it when I got in country.
Right.
I'll take care of it, once the missions wind down. The missions never wound down, and I'll take care of it when I get back. And that's where I really fucked up, because when you get back, they say, hey, has your marital status changed? If it has, sign here. If it's the same, you're going to sign over here. Well, I signed over there. I signed and said that it hasn't changed, because at that point I was afraid that they were going to like completely crucify me.
Right.
Like, dude, so I had been divorced for over almost 8 months, withdrawing all this money illegally. Not only that, and at that point, there was a little bit of greed inside me too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I'm looking at my fat bank account, tax free.
Right.
I'm like, oh my, this is, you know what? I'll just ride this wave and get out of the Marine Corps eventually. I'll EAS in 2007.
You were what, 21 at the time?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Young, stupid.
Yep.
And so I didn't tell the Marine Corps that I had gotten divorced, and then I was illegally withdrawing money, and then eventually my hand was caught in the cookie jar. And at that time, I did do the right thing. I paid the money back.
Yeah.
And it's I hate saying this part of the story because this is the hardest part to tell. And not because I feel bad for myself, but because this is where a lot of people, I feel like if you don't understand how fucked up the government is, that's where you'll really want to turn on the government. Yeah. And when I say people want to turn on the government, so I paid them back, and I asked for a pretrial agreement. Hey, look, I'll sign a contract for another 16 years, and I'll give my life to the Marine Corps for another 16 years, a full 20-year contract. Bust me back down to E1. I'll start all over just as a thank you. I gave you the money back, but they didn't kind of want anything to do with that. And they eventually obviously gave me a bad conduct discharge, threw me in the brig, busted my rank down. And the kind of the sad part is the amount I was found guilty for wasn't even the real amount. I was found guilty for $16,000. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I was charged with $16,000, but I was only found guilty of about $6,000. Even though so follow the timeline, I was charged with $16,000. I took the $16,000, gave it to Uncle Sam, said, "Here's your money back."
Yeah.
Then I was found guilty of $6,700, about $10,000 less. And I'm like, well, I overpaid you guys by about 10 grand. And they're like, well, it's too bad. So that was back in 2007. I've never seen the money. Even though I paid them back, they weren't interested in any of that, and overpaid by 10 grand. They weren't interested in that either. They knocked me down to E1, and then I spent my last few months in the brig, picking up trash on the side of the road. And that just, to me, that like completely demoralized any type of, whatever confidence the Marine Corps gave me, which was an immense amount of confidence, it was all gone. And they didn't take it away. I was just so ashamed that had happened, and that was a pretty rough time. So
I think that, and my thing is, and when you shared that with me, for whatever reason, I remember that moment because I wasn't living here. I was living at my old place. You told me about it. I was at like a little birthday party or something. I don't know. We had family over, I remember, and you started getting into it with me, and I could tell like how serious of a thing this was for you to talk about. You told me you hadn't like told really anybody, maybe one or two other people or whatever the case may be. And you talked about how hard it was for you to talk about it. But when you explain your story, again, think what you want to think. Everybody has their own opinions. I don't know, about 30-ish other guys that I was deployed with that I could have easily seen fallen into the same exact thing, present company included. You make decisions because you think it's the best thing for you in that opportunity, or in that instance, and then something happens, something changes, and oh my God, the amount of times I've procrastinated on something, and like I knew in my gut, like I just need to do whatever this thing is. I know that I need to get this thing done, and you just keep pushing it down the road. You keep kicking the can. I'll do it later, and you never get an opportunity to. And the older you get, the faster time goes by. And like you look back and you're like, oh my God, it's been 9 months. It's been a year. It's been whatever. Like since I was supposed to do this thing, I see how somebody can get caught up in that. And then for you to go through everything that you went through after that that was the punishment in and of itself. Everything that you described, how that made you feel, the toll that it took on you, like, holy shit, man, if you can't say that somebody paid their fucking dues for something, that's my opinion. Now, what challenges did that lead to after service? Like you mentioned, you said a little bit, like alcohol.
Well, I was a lie, man.
Yeah.
I was the lie because, Chris, why don't you go get a VA loan? I'm not. I'm gonna get a conventional or FHA loan. I don't want, the bank says, because of the market, I'm better off going this route. Hey, Chris, why don't you go get a veterans card so you can get 10% off at Lowe's or whatever? Those little small things that I never knew I was going to have to deal with. why don't you get a license plate? The Marine one, I got one, you should get one too. All these little things, you have to be in order to be classified in the government as a veteran, you have to have an honorable discharge or general under honorable conditions.
Right.
And not even an OTH other than honorable. It doesn't, and man, it was, and no one knew about it. When I got thrown in the brig, my mom, my dad, my sisters, they knew. So no one knew. And every real person I shouldn't say person, every girl that I'd ever gotten in a serious relationship with, like I was engaged once before my wife, and the girl that I was married to in the Marine Corps, I was married to her for 9 months. I'm not going to say where she's from, what her name is, but that wasn't a real marriage. She didn't even live in North Carolina where I was stationed. She stayed in another state.
That's so Marine-like of you.
It's also grunt too. Like
we just linked up. We linked up just so we could do this thing, and I mailed her money every single month, so she got something out of it.
Yeah.
And then I stayed where I was. I got something out of it. I was keeping the other part of the change, living out in town. I had a bachelor pad. Legally, I was married, but I led the bachelor life. So
yeah.
But every girl that I had since the Marine Corps that I'd gotten in a serious relationship with, something that I have opened up about, like, listen, I've been technically married before. I want you to know that, like, when the L word comes out and you start saying that you love somebody, then you want them to know everything. And, going through that, how many different times I've had to say, that before. And all my friends, most of my friends don't know. They do. They may now. My work, any employer I ever worked for, none of them knew. They do now. Yeah, because I started opening up about it. I had this very freeing moment, and that was before Mexico, where I wanted to start talking about it just so I could feel a little bit of that weight coming out of the rucksack, because it was just so heavy to carry around on a daily basis, all the shame and the vortex that I was just living in on a daily basis of feeling that, even though I am a veteran, I'm technically not a veteran because I can't get any type of veterans benefits. None. I can't go to the VA and do any type. If I have a cold, I got a little boo-boo, I got to go to a regular doctor. I can't. It was so hard to deal with. And then to just try to cover up my lies. Like, I don't even think my wife's family knows.
Mm-hmm.
She has 3 brothers. None of them know. One of them's in the Air Force. None of them know. She's got a stepdad. Her dad doesn't know. I think her mom knows. Accidentally found out when Maggie and I were dating early on. But man, it was just that type of thing. Plus the nervousness and getting triggered easily, startled easily. I had anger problems where I would, control issues. A lot of that was because of Iraq and how I left, the Marines. So that's
like you had the worst of both worlds. You're dealing with the shitty part of being a veteran and then also the shitty part of having that taken from you. Like, you didn't have the title, but you went through everything else. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like you fucking went to college and didn't get the fucking degree. You still went to college. You know what I'm saying?
Dude,
like, God,
it's
wild to me, man. Yeah. Well, so you were struggling and you were having a hard time, like you said, mental health, alcohol, and what led you from being in that place to psychedelic therapy? Like, how did you make that jump?
A lot of that, and just stop me if I get too long-winded on that.
No, man, go for it.
I really didn't become the mess of a man that I was until I had kids. And that's because of my childhood and the trauma I went through growing up. And when I had children of my own, I fell madly in love with them, head over heels. You guys all have kids, just that utmost compassion. You're obsessed with them to the point to where you're so narcissistic about it that there's no way else anybody loves their kids as much as I love my kids. There's just no way that other dads, you just feel that way because that love is so strong. And that's when I became so resentful for my childhood. I just felt cheated. I was upset at my mom. I was upset at my dad. My dad is in this, we don't have to keep bringing him up. But I guess to understand what led me to psychedelics, back to your question, a lot of that had to do with my childhood that I didn't know was an issue. Because, the funny trick about trauma is it teaches you to call things by the wrong name.
Oh,
And,
yeah,
you know,
man.
love looks like betrayal, or betrayal looks like love. You know, you feel like things that weren't your fault were your fault.
Right.
And you don't understand it as a kid. You know, there's one instance that definitely stands out in my mind. You know, my dad, they say spoil the rod, not the child. He definitely spoiled the rod. And he would, I'm sure if he were sitting here, he's like, well, you know, we call it spankings in my house. We call it, you know, punishment, things you deserved. But a lot of the times he would get like carried away where he's whipping me. Like it's not a paddle. It's not a hand. It's the belt on the back. And I'm, you know, he's got me by one hand and I'm running circles around him. And the one of the worst times I think I was about 13 years old, and I had made a comment about my sister. And I think the comment was something like, you know, well, if she's not around, and if she were to die tomorrow, would you feel bad? Because we were at each other's throat. We were brother and sister, 2 years apart. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be that upset if she were to die or something like that. And that's what I said to my dad. The next thing I know, all of a sudden there was a medicine bottle. He whipped at my head, drugged me out of the room, and I got a full on beating, like with a belt. You know, belt came off first, whipping me, and as soon as the belt fell out of his hands, it was his fists, his hands, and he beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And then he felt so. This is one of the times in my life that I can remember my dad actually feeling remorseful. And it's funny because he looked confused because I was obviously sobbing. I mean, I was a 13-year-old broken boy that had just gotten the shit beat out of them by their dad,
Right.
with their fists, with their hands. I think I remember being kicked. I don't know if I'm just, you know, imagining that, but it was bad. And you know, broken. I'm crying. I remember I think he started crying. He felt, because I think he realized, all of a sudden he realized what he had just done to his son.
Right.
You know, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And I said, the only thing that I could think of, I said, I just want to kill myself, Dad. And instead of giving me, you know, son, that's not what you know, I'm sorry. Instead of anything, there's a million things that he could have done. And he handed me a revolver, you know.
Dude, what the fuck?
To kill myself. And I'll never forget these words. And as he was upset and I was upset, he said, you kill yourself first and I'll kill myself afterwards. And obviously I'm sitting here today, you know.
Dude, that is such a heavy fucking thing. And for you, and you can say that and just like that experience is not the experience that anyone is supposed to have. That's not a memory that you're supposed to have. That's not fair, man. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just felt like it's a very heavy thing that you said. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. And I'm, you know, and I also want to apologize too for those that are listening. I don't want to come across, I don't want to talk past it like it doesn't mean anything to me and it didn't impact me, but I'm just kind of circling back to your question about why did I get into psychedelics? You know, even after that situation happened, I couldn't get enough of his love. I still sought after his affection. And that's, again, the quiet trick about trauma. You don't understand what it's actually doing to you, and you're calling things by the wrong name. And then, I mean, just to kind of compound all this stuff that had happened, and he's, you know, still kind of, I want to say he was my hero, but how delusional of a little kid am I to that guy I still want to hang out with? That guy, what he says matters to me. You know,
right.
I need his approval.
Right.
And it's just insane how really fucked up you can get as a child from all the things that you have to go through. And one of the things that I didn't realize that maybe even had an issue. So my dad, I don't know any other better way to word this. He kidnapped me and my sisters when we were, when I was 5. My younger sister was 3. And how did he kidnap you? Well, he was going through a divorce with my mom. They were at the beginning of divorce. We lived in Kentucky, and he came to our schools where we were at. He lied to the administration, pulled us out of schools, called the cops, told them a bunch of lies about my mom. And I don't remember this part. My sister remembers my mom being on the street, on her knees, crying, sobbing, please don't take my kids. Please don't take my kids. And he took us to Florida and hid us there for 3 weeks. And I remember being pulled out of school and going there. And it's funny now. I'm like, I can see it so much more clearly now that I'm an adult, and it's almost like I've stepped outside of myself in order to see how really fucked up that was.
Yeah.
And and I can't imagine what my mom went through.
Right.
Never knowing. I mean, every day is a new hell. Where are my kids? Where did he take? This is back in. I was born in '84, so this would have been in 1989. What cell phones are around? What way is there for her to get a hold of him, tracking GPSs or anything that she would have known where we were? And he hid us there for 3 weeks before. I don't know if his family. We were there with his family before they talked him into, talked him into, doing the right thing and bringing us back. I never heard the after story of how we ended up back where we were. But I find all these things out as an adult. I found out that he raped my mom, as an adult. And it's just, you don't, it makes you feel like your memories are fake. It makes you feel, it's so confusing as an adult, how this guy am I a good person? Am I a piece of shit? Did I do something wrong? I love this guy so much, and he raped my mom, and now it's such the vortex of confusion. It's so hard to honestly, like, even articulate to somebody what that feels like. And then I had kids, and one other thing that I want to talk about, because this is another heavy hitter as far as my intro into psychedelics, is I have a half brother and a half sister that I didn't even know existed until I was in high school. My dad abandoned them when they were, I think, 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 years old. They were very young. And unfortunately, they paid the price for it as well. My half sister, which I may have met one time in my life, but she lost her life to suicide from an overdose. And my half brother has been institutionalized multiple times because of addiction and suicide, from what I was told. I know that he was hospitalized once for suicide and once for, drugs or alcohol. And then I think a combination of both another time. And then I fucking hate him so bad. Not now, but before Mexico. Like, you piece of shit. Like, you abandoned them, and they're one of the reasons why, their life spiraled out of control. They never had a dad. Their dad left them, and then he got back in their life when I was in high school, so they were much older than me at that point, 20s, early, late 20s, had families of their own and everything, and now I have kids. So now fast forward to 2019, when my daughter was born, Charlotte, and the love I have for her, man, it just breaks my heart that he did that. And I can't understand, and I'll never understand how another human being can abandon their own children. And, he says, she doesn't want me around, and I tried, and she wouldn't let me. And she said, we're better off without you. There's always two sides to every coin. And now, sure. And not only that, but I've seen a lot of his story firsthand. You know what I mean? I've seen him rocking on the bed back and forth, like I should say like an autistic person. That's politically incorrect, but rocking back and forth, repeating the same 5 words over and over again. I just can't do it anymore. I just can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I had to hide the guns from my own dad because I was afraid he was going to commit suicide as a kid. And
how old were you roughly?
Man, I don't,
if you had a guess,
it was less than 13. It was before 13, sometime after 8.
Oh, Lord, man. Yeah.
And that was like, I'm not saying that was my normal, but like I said from, kind of the beginning, it was more learn how to survive instead of how to live,
Yeah.
And that was my normal childhood. So when I became a dad, I became like hellbent. I don't care if I burn bridges, whatever I have to do, quit my job, disown family. It doesn't matter. My family, my 3 kids are going to be my everything. They're going to be my legacy. I'm going to make sure that I try to rewrite history. But the more I grew in love with them, the more it became harder for me to, and this is a different thing, but to accept their love, which you would think sounds counterintuitive, because I felt so dirty as an individual because of my lineage, because of my dad, because of my half brother that had, how many times he had tried to take his own life, or my half sister and my dad, how many times that he was threatening to take his own life and then giving me the gun. And all these things. I'm just like, I'm not even worthy, I felt like, of my own children's love. And that was one of my intentions going into Mexico, is I just wanted to feel worthy that, and don't get me wrong, I love my kids. My existence is wrapped around who they are before and after Mexico. But it was just this part of me that didn't feel worthy, that if they knew the broken piece of shit that their dad was, that there's no way that they would have chosen me. And that, man, that was just something heavy that I lived with for far too long.
Yeah, man.
And I just became so resentful at my dad. I mean, that was everything compounded. Everything was like a vortex of emotions of, I'm not good enough for my family, and always kind of trying to prove myself. You know, that's one of the reasons why I got into like ultra running and doing Ironman triathlons, you know, just because I was trying to prove myself to this thing that didn't exist. And that was called acceptance and self-love. I've never known what it was like to love myself and actually truly love myself. And I just became so upset at my dad that, and my mom, you know, she was married twice to the same guy who was a monster. So when I wasn't living with one monster, I was living with the other one. And I just, it got to the point that I knew something had to be done. Thankfully enough, no matter how much drinking I did, there was still a quiet voice, a sober voice in the back of my head that said, like, healing is possible. And a buddy of mine, I'm not going to say where I met this person, but a buddy of mine told me about psilocybin. And he said, hey man, we got to go out in the woods and just try this. And he didn't even know about my trauma. I just said, hey, I'm looking to get outside my own head. Shit's so loud in there. It won't stop. I mean, this is a window that won't close. It's a 24 hours a day, lights on. We're busy. We're understaffed type of thing. And I knew that I needed help. Thankfully, I can honestly admit that I have never attempted suicide after the age. I don't remember what age I was. I did try when I was young. Stupid bunch of pills. I took the wrong ones, and thankfully, all I did was just get really sick. And but since, you know, the Marine Corps, I never attempted suicide, and that was never even an option. That was not even close, because my love was so strong for my children. It was not even close. Thinking about leaving them behind to deal with all the aftermath and just to repeat, you know, history. But go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I had one thing that I wanted to say also, is that as an outsider, as somebody that can call you a friend, and I knew you on the outside when you were going through these things, but didn't know the depth of pain that you were experiencing on a regular basis. You are, and always have been, such a positive person to be around, which I think is an important thing to stress or just touch on for a second, because man, whenever you were around, you have helped me out with stuff we've done at festivals, Triple H since the very beginning, and you always brought this positive, outgoing energy that just made other people feel good to be around. And then when as your friend, to hear like where all that came from, and I'm like, oh man, like it's such a heavy, tragic thing. You know what I mean? To hear that possibly part of why you were such a positive person was because that might have been what you needed. And you are being that for so many other people. And that's why I think it's so important to just touch on, because it's like, when it comes to suicide, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to all that shit, just because somebody's fucking positive and you think that they are that fucking person all the time does not mean that they're doing as well as you think. You know what I mean? So I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to make sure, like, you, and I'm sure you've always known that, and other people have always told you that, which is why you're a successful musician and all these other things that you enjoy doing. Like, you're very good at those things and authentic at those things. But it's like you've always brought that energy, man. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to bring that up to you.
I agree. You are a great musician. I just want to know that I don't think I know who the Eagles are.
Brad's like 20. So, I mean, that's also 20. Part of why. He knows Ice-T mostly as an actor.
No, I don't.
Not too much other things. Anyway,
Sorry.
And so,
It's all good.
so you got into psychedelics.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, we did it out in the woods. And that first experience, and I've only done it 4 times, psilocybin. Those are the only psychedelics I ever did before Mexico. And they were always pretty high doses. The first one was almost 1.75 of a gram, so just a little shy of 2 grams. And I remember having this feeling like my wife wanted me to know that I was good enough. I didn't manifest it. Dude, we were out in the trees. We put on this playlist. It was a John Hopkins playlist. John Hopkins does a lot of studies for psychedelic research, whether it's PTSD, addiction, whatever they're. So we put this playlist on, listening to it, sitting in these uncomfortable ass chairs for six hours, sitting in the chair, looking at the trees, closing my eyes, opening my eyes, and just feeling sorry that I had never given myself that before. I actually felt pity on myself that I had never given myself that experience because of how much I was able to feel like love and just being connected to things. And that was only 1.75 gram. And then the time after that was 3.5 grams. The time after that was almost 5.25. So I'm a little past the heroic dose.
Yeah, buddy.
And then I backed it off to 3.5 grams. And that was the last time that I'd done psilocybin. But every time I was doing more, and I was respecting the medicine. That's one thing too. To kind of segue into the Mexico thing is I started doing a ton of research, listened to all these doctors. I can't remember this guy's name. His name's Matt. He's a doctor, works for John Hopkins. I listened to several of his podcasts on
Not Huberman.
Matt Huberman. Is that him?
Huberman.
Does he look like a young guy in the face?
Yeah.
He looks like he's 20.
Super good shape. Yeah, he used to be a big. Yeah, I think it's the same
Okay.
guy. Anyway, sorry.
No, man. Yeah, just listened to a ton of podcasts, listened to a couple of audiobooks, and then read an insane amount of articles, information on psychedelics. And, I got my wife on board. She knew about it before the first time I did it, which to me, one of the best things for psychedelic is having a great, support system.
Yes.
At home. That there's not enough is enough credit can be, given to those that are holding space for you when you come back from wherever you were at.
Oh man, that's such a good point. Never thought about that before. Yeah, I love that.
Because, not to put the cart before the horse. I don't want to get too far into this, but integration, and we're going to talk about that post Mexico. But every good psychedelic trip deserves good integration. No matter if you're in your woods, if you're in a piece of property somewhere overlooking some water, you're on a beach. If you have a good psychedelic trip, and I'm not knocking on taking some mushrooms or some LSD and going and listening to a Grateful Dead concert. I'm not knocking on that at all. But I mean, for therapeutic reasons where you're sitting somewhere, listening to something, you have some intentions, every one of those psychedelic trips deserves good integration afterwards, or at least a college try, because without good integration afterwards, you're up in your chances just coming back to right where you were before you went. And that's what I had done. I didn't integrate at all after the first psychedelic trip of psilocybin. That night, cracked open the beers, and I got blacked out drunk. It was awesome. We were sitting around a fire, not the blacked out part, but let me, sorry, I put the comma in the wrong.
Pretty awesome.
We obviously, I walked around the woods, I was down at my deer lease in Southern Illinois, walked around the property and just, fell in love with trees and all that kind of stuff. And then lit the fire, had one beer turned into 6 beers, turned into, Captain and Coke. That's my poison. And then I didn't integrate. And then even though I was still feeling euphoric, I still kind of had that after high of my first psychedelics experience. I didn't integrate. And because of that, I felt right back into the routine. I felt great. It's like, Maggie, I felt like you wanted me to know you were enough. And man, we did what, married couples do after you have some kind of experience like that. You let your wife know.
You fight a lot.
No.
Oh,
another F word.
Yeah.
So it was, that was almost like some marital counseling that I had all by myself. And I felt my wife wanted me to know that, I was enough. And I'm like, babe, you were there with me in my trip. And I just, and she's like, oh my God. And it was beautiful. And, and then we the fight thing. So, and then, I did it a second time, third time, fourth time, and fourth time, but I'm not going to get into the other ones, cause they're their own kind of experience and journey. But that's what really piqued my curiosity for, Mexico.
Okay.
Because while doing all this research, I listened to the Shawn Ryan. He's a Navy SEAL, retired. I don't know if he retired or got out of the teams. And he, was a CIA contractor, got out of that gig. Then he did the small arms, tactical training course online thing. And I got out of that. And then he got into podcast. And in doing that, he obviously got networked with a guy named Marcus, Capone and Amber Capone. Marcus Capone is another Navy SEAL, another team guy. And he had gotten out of the teams, and his life was not like my life, but in his own individual way. He was having a rough go. All the multiple combat deployments, all the shit that he had to see, they're the elite of the elite. They're up there with Delta and the Green Berets, special forces dudes, soft. So, his wife, Amber, said, hey, we need to do something for you. And it was a last ditch effort. I'm not trying to tell their story for them, but I've heard it so many times. There was a last ditch effort. She did some research, Amber did, and found this facility in Mexico called Ambio Life Sciences. And they use two main drugs, Ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT. And he went down there on, last ditch effort. I'll try that. Fine. Came back completely changed. So he wanted to give someone else that gift. Give them the gift. He wanted to help someone else, reach out. Hey man, it can help you and his other team guys. And in doing that, he ended up creating this organization called VETS, which is an acronym. Surprise, surprise. Another military acronym.
What?
Stands for Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. And all they do, from what I understand, they raise the funds to facilitate to get the guys to go down there. So they don't send them down there. They raise the money. They get the grants, the money to give over to these other team guys to send down to Mexico and to get this treatment, to go through the whole 5-day, the whole gamut. And I listened to this Shawn Ryan podcast, and then Shawn Ryan he went down there. And he did the whole thing. And he has like a 3-hour episode or something like that where he's talking to his wife. It's a podcast. It's an informal one. He's just communicating with his wife, and he said his entire experience. And I noticed that even though my box doesn't check a lot of the same boxes that those guys have, multiple combat deployments, I only did one. No combat action ribbon. They probably could at least have 12 if they give away 12 for every,
Right.
or more. But the alcohol, the anger, the short temper, the excuses, the depression, the anxiety, the PTSD, all these other types of mental health issues I was struggling with, those guys had them all too. I'm like, man, if these fucking dudes, if these dudes can go over there and they can come back, and every one of them were giving testimonials, if they can get fixed, like if these guys, the elite of the elite, these Delta Force dudes, if they can get fixed, then fuck, man. I'm like, I got a little bit of childhood trauma. I mean, I should say a little bit. I'm not underselling it. I got quite a bit of childhood trauma, but I felt, man, there's got to be a chance for me. And I answered the call, obviously Maggie has been, I don't even want to say a rock, because that doesn't really paint the full picture. Because even when I started getting into psychedelics, of course she wasn't on board. Of course she wasn't excited to hear I'm going to go trip balls in the woods.
Yeah. All wives are totally cool with that. All wives would be totally cool with that for sure. Yeah.
But I think one thing that I have been gifted with is maybe the gift of a good explanation. And not that I'm a car salesman, but I got her to understand. I did my research. I looked into it. I listened to these podcasts. I read a ton of material, and I'm like, babe, you don't understand what this stuff could maybe do for me. And, the psychedelics, the psilocybin magic mushrooms that segued into, her being open enough for a discussion about me going to Mexico. And then obviously that steamrolled itself into me actually being able to go to Mexico.
So you get connected with Ambio Life Sciences.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Ambio Life Sciences. You get connected with them. What happens next?
So the beginning part, it's pretty, like any other, like, hey, I'm interested in and what you got, your product. And they assign you a intake coordinator. And this person calls you up and says, hey, my name's so-and-so, or email, here's how much it cost. And there might be people out there that might be wondering that question. So I'll go ahead and address that real quick. For veterans or first responders, it's $6,850 to go. And, my wife obviously was not, the happiest when I told her the amount. But with one quick, in a very kind and soft way, with, explain it to her, I'm like, well, what's the price of me not doing it?
Yeah.
And she's like, shit. And I'm like, yeah. I'll tell you what the price is, because I've already thought about it. My kids, our marriage. And that's all I had to say. Not to say my kids, our kids and our marriage. And she completely understood where I was coming from. So, and I'm going to get to this, but when I came back from Mexico, she had the greatest analogy, man. This is her, this is how kick-ass she is. So when I come back, she's like, babe, while you were over there, I was thinking, $6,850. Yeah, that's a lot of money. What's the price of not doing it? You have a great point, but think of it this way. She's like, if you didn't have insurance and you had to go get knee surgery, let's say I tore my ACL, MCL, whatever, I had to have some kind of knee surgery. So you're looking at anesthesia bill. You're looking at the surgeon's bill. You're looking at the nurse bill that maybe if I got to stay overnight or whatever, it's probably outpatient, but whatever, this bill, that bill, the orthopedic doctor that had to, the MRI. And she's like, it would be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Essentially, you wouldn't get a procedure done on your heart, and more importantly, on your mind, that was out of pocket, that insurance doesn't cover. And you paid $6,850 to become a completely changed individual. And I'm like, get over it and kiss me. You know what I mean? It's one of those things you're like,
how important is that to have her
that
so
outlook,
supportive?
Man, that outlook. And that's, I hope if anybody gets anything out of it, because there's probably a lot of people out there that just can't really conceptualize 6,000. And I will say for non-veterans, non-first responders is exactly 1,000 more than that. It's $7,850. So, and I don't know if the prices have changed. I went in April 16th of, just a couple of months ago, checked in. So, called the intake coordinator guy, or I submitted my name after she gave me the green light. Maggie said, yep, let's do it. He called me and said, hey, we got a slot at September. I said, man, I can't wait that long. And I wasn't slipping to the point of, like I said, suicide, but I went through a couple of recent hard things. I lost my best friend in the world in 2019 to cancer. And this is a person that I feel loved me more than my own mom and my dad did. She helped raise me since I was 10. She didn't have a child of her own. She was a paraplegic from the way, so paralyzed waist down, couldn't have kids. Lost her in 2019. And she flew to Illinois to meet my daughter, Charlotte, in January. In February, we found out she had cancer. And in April, she was gone. And that, again, became so, and thank you, I became so more resentful on top of what I felt she did for my own childhood, that this woman, that was so looking forward to me being a dad and living a long life. I mean, she was in her early 60s when she passed away. And then in January of 2025 of this year, I lost the best man at my wedding to brain cancer. And that was like the thing, man, that just completely, I was over the edge. And I knew that it was a matter of fucking time before I was a full blown alcoholic. And I'm not saying that I'm not, I say that with grace, because I think there's a lot of people out there that just like to give labels.
Yeah.
That's if you drink more than one beer a week, you're a binge drink, or whatever it is, and it's fine. I'll be an alcoholic if that's what they see in my eyes. And I'm totally cool with that. But I was getting blacked out drunk probably 2 to 3 nights a week, not remember going to bed, not even remember if I ate dinner the night before or not. I ate dinner because I can see, it was bad. I was drinking at least 6 nights out of the week, sometimes 7 nights out of the week, with the months in about a year and a half before Aaron, one of the 2 best men at my wedding, passed away. And when he did, man, then it was a constant 7 nights a week. And I'm getting blacked out probably 4 or 5 nights a week. And I'm like, this is fucking way too close.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, man. I'm going to be an alcoholic. And one thing that I know is, and I want to say this with a lot of respect, I'm trying to be careful because, there's a lot of people that struggle with alcohol.
Yeah.
And, they're doing the very best that they can. Maybe they didn't know that Ambio life existed, and maybe they don't have the financial situation to go.
Right.
And the best that they can do is Alcoholics Anonymous. But the way that I look at AA, I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be for me. I'm going to be relying on a chip, my 1 month chip, my 5 month chip, and my sponsor, the person that got me in, and calling him. And then I got to sponsor somebody else, and I got to go to all the meetings. And if I miss a meeting, man, I'm going to have a relapse. And I'm like, I'm not saying that's the problem with AA. And by the way, AA, the guy that founded AA, Bill, I don't remember his last name, but if the people that are AA, they go to Alcoholics Anonymous, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say Bill. He found his sobriety off of a massive LSD trip. And it was open about it. I mean, this is beyond a Wikipedia thing. This is like, look up any biography on the guy. He found his sobriety through a massive LSD trip. And he founded Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's because he was able to completely change his mind. He wasn't using a system. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. It's also a community. It's also many great things, but it's a system. But with the drugs that I took, the medicine I took in Mexico, it is changing everything. It is going down to the core of the problem, the dependency, the trauma, everything. It's recircuiting your brain in a way that you never even knew that you were addicted to alcohol. And this is maybe too soon to say this, but it's been a little over 2 months that I've had a drink. And it's not that I haven't had a drink, it's that I haven't even thought about having a drink. And I don't use any type of safety net, and I feel free because I don't feel like I have to go to a meeting, and this is where I want to say it with grace, because I just want to tread lightly, because I respect those people so much that do go to Alcoholics Anonymous. But imagine yourself not needing any type of side support ever again. And not that I'm never going to have a drink again, because maybe if I want to have a drink again, I will. And that this thing, I feel comfortable if I want to, I will, because I don't have all the trauma that I used to have. And I don't want to get, that's,
No, that's okay.
But so either way, man, I'm sorry, kind of jump back to where you're asking, when I got down to the point to where I knew I needed to go, it was a matter of phone call. They called me up. They said September. I said, I can't do it. I need something sooner. And then and I also want to say that they say that the medicine meets you where you're at. So if you have in your heart, you want to change so badly, you have the being the nice guy, constantly people pleasing, all the things that are on the telltale sign of someone that's possibly damaged, or why does he have, if you have that already inside of you, the medicine meets you halfway. And I was sitting at my kitchen island when the text came through from my intake coordinator that said, "Hey, slot just opened up in April. Do you want it?" And I read it, and I completely bawled my eyes out. My kids were like, "Daddy, what's wrong? Mommy, why is Daddy sad?" And she's like, "Chris, what happened?" And I'm like bawling, ugly crying, snot, everything coming out, because I knew that the fight was at a fucking end. And I didn't, not that I thought I knew the medicine was going to fix me, but I knew that I was going to be able to go there and receive the medicine and let it work inside of me. And I was just so ready for a change and for the help. And I knew it was so close. And I showed her my phone, and she cried. That we didn't have to wait till September. And and that was it, man. And then some other things happened in order to go there. We can get into the Ibogaine, but you got to do a lot of, you got to get an EKG. You have to give them your full medical history. There's no sugarcoating it at all, not even a little bit. They have to know everything, because the minute you show up, you're peeing in a cup. You're doing another EKG. They're taking your blood, the full medical panel, everything. They're checking just to make sure you have to detox for 7 days. So if you are in a place to where you can't, you have withdrawals and you can't cut alcohol completely without jeopardizing your health, they also have detox houses. They do cost more, or you go to a facility where you can get off of whatever you're on, whether it's an opiate, heroin, alcohol, whatever your poison is. As long as you can detox for 7 days without putting your health in jeopardy, then you can show up to Ambio. That's all you have to do is detox for 7 days.
What's it look like in relation to being in the United States? Same, better, worse? Like, what does that look like?
You know, I'll say, okay, so Ambio is right across the border in Mexico. And before this podcast, Brad asked me an interesting question in the garage. And he was asking me, hey, with everything going on right now in California, is it like, would it be kind of safe to kind of go down there? Because I don't know if maybe he knew, but was a great question, because Ambio, what they do, when you paid your money, it's all wired. You know, you send it via wire. They give you the confirmation. They give you your schedule of what you're going to do when you're there, so you can prepare mentally. They give you an insane amount of literature on here's what Ibogaine is. Here's the history. Here's the causes ceremonially. Here's what we do. Here's 5-MeO DMT. Here's Tasmakal, the Indian Sweat Lodge. Here's all of that stuff. They give you so much literature to read, and just to make sure that you're as prepared as you can. So they say, all right, we're going to pick you up at a certain hotel. I don't want to disclose it. I don't know if.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
At a certain hotel in San Diego. Very nice hotel right across the street from the San Diego airport. I underestimated how close the Mexican border is from San Diego. When they picked me up, and I will say, before you show up, they put you in a quick group chat. They say, hey, you're going to expect this group chat about 5 days before your retreat day, day one. And in the group chat, it's going to be everyone that you're going down there with you. So you don't know anybody before then. No clue if there's veterans, non-veterans, male, female, nothing. You could be the only one. So you're going to see everybody in the group chat. We're going to put some medical staff in the group chat, some personnel, and then Trevor Millar, who is one of the founders of terrific human being, one of the founders of Ambio Life Sciences. And so the group chat came up and said, hey, you're going to be meeting at the hotel. You know, I don't think it's a thing I say it. It's a Sheraton hotel across the street from the San Diego airport. It's at 10:30 a.m. on day one, on April the 16th. And you're going to be picked up by a guy, and they said he's in the group chat. He's going to introduce himself. He'll have Baja California license plates, big, huge white Suburban. At 10:30, be in front of the, you know, and that was it, man. We picked us up, and within 45 minutes, we're pulling up to the house in Tijuana, Mexico. So Tijuana, if you've ever been there, a lot of it looks a little slummy. And I don't mean to say that disrespectfully, because I don't know if that's considered, I don't know what third world means country.
Right.
I'm not sure what that expression means. I know what Iraq looks like.
Right.
And some of the places that I saw in Iraq, parts of Tijuana did mirror that. So it was very interesting and very humbling to see the shanties, shacks built into the side of a mountain, literally built into the side of a mountain, one shack, nothing near it. And you just wonder, how the hell do they even communicate or commute to and from? But by the time we pulled up to our house, which was like a small mansion, I mean, I don't know how many thousands of square feet this house was, 6, 7, 8, 10,000 square feet. It was huge, gorgeous house, but at the same time too, very humbling, very peaceful, very simple. When you show up, you're greeted by the entire staff. They have medical staff there. There are 4 nurses that work at your house. So the way that it was explained, Ambio has several houses that are constantly operating, constantly have people going, through the program. It's a 5-day program. And at any given time, all these houses have people, coming in and out, depending on where they're at, day 1, day 3, whatever. And my house was day 1, and you have 4 registered nurses assigned to your house, and they're on 2 12-hour shifts. So 2 on days, 2 on nights, 2 on days. And just like if you've ever been in a hospital overnight, you have the ongoing and the ongoing have to take your vitals, the ongoing take your vitals. And they're there to, it was insane. There was 2 chefs assigned to the house. The food looked like it was being presented to Gordon Ramsay, and it tasted better than it even looked. It was insane. The food, it's like, it blows my mind. The amount, that's a place where you're not a number. Where you're a soul.
Right.
Because everything they're doing for you is dialed in so fucking perfectly. The way that they speak to you, with their tone and their voice. The food that they give you nourishes your body and your mind. There's no junk in it. It is incredible, the food. Oh my God, so incredible.
All just getting you into the headspace you
exactly.
need to be into. Yeah.
Exactly. And everything, they introduce you to the staff. They're all waiting on the stairs. There's a huge spiral staircase. They're all waiting on the stairs. So as soon as you walk in, they take your bags for you. You go up to your own private assigned room. I had a huge room. My closet was almost just as big as my room. My own bathroom, gorgeous hot tub in there, had a jacuzzi on the roof. Or no, jacuzzi was in the bathroom, hot tub was on the roof. I mean, house was gorgeous, had 3 levels to the house. It was insane. And we formed up in a group circle. They kind of let us know, what was to be expected of the week ahead. It wasn't boot camp, but it wasn't like super formal either. It was relaxed, but it was like, hey, you obviously are all coming here because you're going through something, or you want to go through something. The dudes there came through all walks of life. There were 7 there people total with me, all male. I learned that they do females separately unless a female requests to be with a male group, because they say a lot of female veterans want to be with male groups, which makes sense because they were mostly with dudes while they served. Yeah. But there were 7 of us, and only one of the other 7 was a veteran besides myself. He was a Army dude, and got out, and I think he contracts for the CIA. He didn't say who he didn't say a 3-letter agency. He just said, I'm a contractor. I contract now. So I'm guessing he probably is in a 3-letter agency. But and then the other dudes, one dude was a huge CIA was CEO of a company that just wanted to be a better boss, better family man. He was dealing with some alcohol struggles. He said, I know I can be a better boss for my company. I know I can be a better family man. I've been, first it was 1 glass of wine. Now it's a whole bottle or 2 bottles of wine a night, and it's getting too much. And he's got a couple of SEAL buddies who turned him to Ambio. And another dude was a farmer. There was another real young kid. And I didn't even know this was a thing, who was suffering with COVID depression. So he was coming out of college, graduating college, and he started college during COVID, which I can't imagine what that would be like starting post high school education. And just had a whole, myriad of issues that, from that. And, just a ton of, all walks of life.
So we typically don't do this, but when we started talking about doing this episode, we really wanted you, Chris, to be able to share the whole, there's so much meat in it. Like, we wanted you to be able to share the context of everything that you'd gone through, that led you to the place where you found this treatment to be the best option for you. And I didn't want to cut out anything, you know what I mean? Because there's just so much there that I think is really important to the story. So because of that, this is going to be a 2-part episode. So episode 1 is going to be leading up to the actual treatment, all the context and all the necessary pieces to kind of set the table for that. And then episode 2 will be out in 2 weeks, and that will be the beginning of the actual treatment experience. So please make sure, if you haven't, subscribe, follow our page on Facebook or projectheadspaceandtiming.org, so you can get notified when the next episode comes out, which should be again in 2 weeks. So we look forward to being able to finish the story of Chris, because it's just such an amazing story that it definitely warrants 2 episodes. Would you not agree?
I agree.
Very good for us. So until next time, please make sure you tune back in a couple of weeks to hear the rest of Chris's story.